She was labeled difficult, cancelled overnight, and pushed out of the spotlight. But no one knew the real reason behind Chrisette Michele's silence until now. For the first time, she reveals the diagnosis that explains everything, and it will change the way you see her forever. Stay with us because this is not just a comeback, it is a revelation. Grammy-winning singer Chrisette Michele has just opened up about something truly life-changing. After years of facing public criticism, career setbacks, and deep emotional struggles, she is finally sharing her truth. She has been diagnosed with severe autism. For the first time, so many things about her past, her silence, her breakdowns, her distance are beginning to make sense. But what brought her to this point? And how did she manage to carry this pain quietly for so long? Chrisette Michele has spent most of her adult life in the public eye. From the moment she stepped onto the music scene, her voice stood out rich, soulful, and full of emotion. Her talent earned her a Grammy, critical praise, and a loyal fan base who saw her as one of the most gifted artists of her generation. But fame has two sides, and for Chrisette, it came with constant pressure, endless scrutiny, and painful misunderstandings. In 2017, she made a decision that would change her life forever. Chrisette agreed to perform at the presidential inauguration of Donald Trump. She said her intention was to promote unity and peace, believing her performance could serve as a bridge in a deeply divided country. But many people saw it differently. Within hours, the backlash was fierce. Social media exploded with criticism. Celebrities condemned her choice. Fans turned away. She was dropped from her record label. Show bookings disappeared, and her reputation took a devastating hit. Chrisette became a target of intense public outrage, and no one seemed interested in hearing her side of the story. What the public could not see, however, was the personal toll this took on her. Chrisette was crushed emotionally. Behind the scenes, she was battling depression, anxiety, and an overwhelming sense of isolation. She tried to explain herself through interviews, social media, and her music. But nothing seemed to change the public's opinion. She felt invisible, misunderstood, and completely alone. For years, Chrisette carried the weight of that moment. She questioned herself constantly. Why had people turned on her so quickly? Why did she feel so different, so disconnected from the world around her? Even before the inauguration backlash, she often struggled with emotional regulation and social interactions. She felt overwhelmed in crowds, drained by noise, and uncomfortable during interviews or industry events. Still, she pushed through, believing these were simply personal weaknesses or quirks she had to manage. It was not until much later that she discovered the truth. Chrisette Michele had been living with severe, undiagnosed autism. The diagnosis came as an adult, after years of confusion and emotional exhaustion, and suddenly, everything began to make sense. The constant overwhelm, the emotional shutdowns, the way she never quite felt like she fit in, no matter how hard she tried. These were not signs of failure, they were symptoms of a neurodivergent brain trying to survive in a world that did not understand it. The diagnosis gave her answers, but it also brought grief. Chrisette had to look back at her entire life through a new lens. She realized how many times she had been misunderstood, not just by the public, but by the people closest to her. She also had to forgive herself for not knowing, for struggling silently, and for blaming herself for things that were never her fault. Now Chrisette Michele is sharing her story with honesty and courage. She is not hiding behind a stage or a performance. She is speaking openly about her diagnosis and the impact it has had on her life, her career, and her sense of self. Her story is helping others understand autism in a deeper way, especially how it can appear in women, and especially Black women, who are often misdiagnosed or completely overlooked. Chrisette is no longer chasing approval or trying to fit into a mold. She is embracing who she truly is. And by doing that, she is not just healing herself, she is giving others permission to do the same. Her journey is a reminder that behind every headline is a human being, and behind every silence is a story that deserves to be heard. For years, many people labeled her as emotional, unpredictable, or overly sensitive. In interviews, she sometimes seemed uncomfortable. On social media, her posts could be intense or confusing. Fans, critics, and even industry peers often misunderstood her actions and words. But what the public did not see, what even Chrisette herself did not understand at the time, was that she was carrying an invisible weight. And now, in a moment more personal than anything she has ever shared before, Chrisette has revealed that she has been diagnosed with severe autism as an adult. This is not just another celebrity story meant to stir headlines for attention. It is a moment of truth, a moment of clarity, not just for Chrisette, but for anyone who has ever felt lost, misjudged, or unseen. Her diagnosis is helping her put the pieces of her life together in a way that finally makes sense, and it is changing the way others look at her. 2. For Chrisette, this diagnosis was not just a label, it was a key that unlocked years of confusion, pain, and struggle. Suddenly, her challenges with emotional regulation, her trouble navigating social situations, her need for quiet and structure, all of it began to make sense. The behaviors that people once judged as flaws or dramatic outbursts were actually symptoms of undiagnosed autism. She had been living in a world that expected her to perform and be perfect. While silently battling a condition she never had the words to explain, understanding this changes the story of her entire career. It casts a new light on her silence, her breakdowns, her moments of retreat. Instead of seeing them as weakness or instability, we can now see them as signs of an overwhelmed woman doing her best to survive in an environment that constantly overstimulated her senses and emotions. The spotlight, with its bright lights and constant demands, was not just emotionally draining, it was physically and mentally exhausting for someone with autism. But what makes Chrisette's story even more powerful is her decision to speak up about it. Many people would have kept something like this private, especially after facing such intense criticism in the past. But she chose to share her truth with the world, not for sympathy, but to help others feel seen and understood. She is using her platform to raise awareness about autism, especially how it shows up in women and girls, who are often misdiagnosed or overlooked. Entirely, Chrisette's story is shedding light on the unique challenges that Black women face when it comes to mental health and neurodiversity. For decades, she was labeled, misunderstood, and judged, all while trying to make sense of her feelings and reactions. Even after years of therapy, no one mentioned autism. It was only in recent years, with the help of a neurodiversity therapist, that she finally got the answers she had been searching for all her life. Now, with this diagnosis, Chrisette is not just understanding her past, she is reclaiming it. She is no longer blaming herself for the things she could not control. She is learning to forgive herself for not knowing, and for struggling in silence. Her meltdowns, her emotional shutdowns, her need to withdraw, they were never signs of failure. They were signs of survival. This journey has not only helped Chrisette heal, it has also helped others. Thousands of fans have come forward to thank her for sharing her truth. Many say her story helped them recognize signs of autism in themselves or their loved ones. Some have even gone on to seek diagnoses of their own. The impact of her honesty is spreading far beyond her music. It is touching lives in ways she never imagined. For Chrisette Michele, being diagnosed with autism in adulthood has been a turning point. It has allowed her to rewrite her own story. She is no longer trying to fit into a mold that never suited her. She is no longer apologizing for who she is. Instead, she is embracing her identity with pride, using her voice not just to sing but to speak out, educate, and inspire. In the end, this is not just a story about autism. It is a story about what happens when we finally understand ourselves. It is about the strength it takes to keep going when the world misunderstands you. And it is about the healing that can come when we stop hiding, stop pretending, and start telling the truth. Chrisette Michele's journey reminds us that every person has a story behind their silence, a reason behind their pain, and a strength that often goes unseen. And now that her truth is out in the open, she is not just surviving anymore, she is thriving. In this video, we are going behind the scenes to explore the journey that led to this discovery. We will look at the signs that were missed for so many years and how this diagnosis is helping Chrisette finally understand herself. She opens up about her childhood, the pain of being misunderstood, and the hidden truths behind the moments that once seemed confusing. This is the moment where Chrisette Michele's journey truly shifts. Suddenly, everything starts to make sense. And what you are about to hear may completely change the way we talk about mental health, autism, and the silent battles so many people face, especially in the spotlight. Stay with us, because Chrisette's story is powerful, raw, and eye-opening in ways you might never expect. Autism, womanhood, and survival in the music world. This is the real story behind Chrisette Michele. She did not just arrive in the music. Sunshine made an unforgettable entrance. With a voice that blended soul, R&B, jazz, and gospel, Chrisette became known for her rich tone and deep emotional presence. Her 2007 debut album I Am was a critical success, featuring beloved tracks like If I Have My Way and Be Okay. the latter of which earned her a Grammy. But even in those early interviews, there were quiet signs. She talked about feeling out of place, not quite getting how the industry worked, and preferring peace and stillness over small talk. At the time, people brushed it off. They thought she was just introverted or sensitive, nothing unusual for an artist. But now, after her autism diagnosis, those moments look different. As her fame grew, Chrisette found herself in an industry that expected her to be flawless in public but offered no space for honesty in private. Even with all her talent, she was often labeled as difficult or too emotional. No one knew that behind the scenes, she was struggling with something. She had no words for something even she did not understand yet. She was living with undiagnosed autism. Then came the moment that changed everything. In 2017, Chrisette Michele performed at President Donald Trump's inaugural ball. For many fans, especially in the Black community, the performance felt like betrayal. Chrisette said her goal was to promote unity, to be a bridge in a divided time. But the backlash was harsh and immediate. Her record label dropped her, shows were cancelled, and people turned on her overnight. Behind the headlines, Chrisette was falling apart. She suffered a miscarriage. She struggled with thoughts of ending her life. She was overwhelmed and broken, yet she kept trying to speak up, to explain herself in interviews, through music, on social media. What no one realized then was that she was also battling undiagnosed severe autism. It deeply affected how she read people's reactions, how she handled stress, and how she processed rejection. The world saw a woman who seemed unstable or overly emotional, but now, we know the truth. Chrisette was neurodivergent, her brain worked differently, and during that time, she was in crisis without knowing why. Her emotional shutdowns, her need to be understood, and her reaction to the media storm were not just personal struggles. They were part of a deeper neurological experience. Her diagnosis now gives us a completely new view of those difficult years. Her breakdowns were not just emotional outbursts, they were signs of her brain trying to cope with too much. The sensory overload, the crushing need to explain herself, the fear of rejection, it all adds up now. But her story does not end there. Coming up next, we explore the warning signs that were missed for years, the moment Chrisette began to question how her brain worked, and how learning about her autism later in life is helping her rebuild her identity. Long before the awards, the backlash, and the breakdowns, Chrisette Michele was a little girl in Long Island, New York. In recent interviews, she describes her younger self as different, but she did not know why. She often found peace in her own world, spending hours by herself, lost in imagination, and that, right there, was the beginning of a journey no one saw coming. As a child, Chrisette Michele often found herself staring out the window or writing music while other kids played and talked with ease. She remembers struggling to follow social cues, feeling lost in school, and becoming emotionally drained after even short conversations. To most people, these might have seemed like the usual traits of a deep, creative soul. But now Chrisette knows it was something much more. These were early signs of undiagnosed autism. I used to cry a lot, and I did not even know why, she recently shared. For girls and women, autism often goes unnoticed. That is because their symptoms do not always look like the more well-known signs seen in boys. Many women learn to copy social behavior, smile through confusion, and push themselves to fit in even when they feel out of place inside. Chrisette did that for years. From her school performances to studying vocal music at Five Towns College, she found ways to shine on stage. She learned to impress others with her voice and presence. But behind the curtain, she was constantly doubting herself, overthinking everything, and feeling distant from the world around her. When her music career took off, things only got harder. Imagine being expected to walk red carpets, sing under flashing lights, sit in noisy meetings with record executives, and give back-to-back interviews, all while your mind is crying out for calm, quiet, and order. Chrisette said she would sometimes go completely silent, unable to speak or respond. People thought she was moody or acting like a diva. But those were actually signs of autistic burnout, a deep exhaustion caused by years of pretending to be someone she was not, just to get by in a world that felt overwhelming. The saddest part, no one noticed. Not her team, not her fans, not even Chrisette herself. She thought it was anxiety, depression, or just being too sensitive. Even after years of therapy, nothing fully explained what she was going through. Then in 2024, things changed. She began working with a therapist who understood neurodiversity, and for the first time, someone brought up the word autism. That moment changed everything. Chrisette started doing her own research. She spoke with other autistic women. She looked at her life through this new lens and, suddenly, all the signs were there. Her strong reactions to sound and light, her black and white thinking, her intense focus on music structure, her deep empathy mixed with social exhaustion. It was all part of a pattern she had never seen before. Getting the diagnosis finally brought clarity. For the first time, my life made sense, she said. But it did not bring comfort right away. Instead, it brought grief. She grieved the version of herself that could have been the version that was understood, supported, and accepted from the start. This part of Chrisette Michele's journey is not just about getting a label. It is about reclaiming her story. It is about finding her identity again and rebuilding her self-worth after years of being misunderstood. For Chrisette, learning she is autistic was not the end of her journey, it was the beginning of a brand new one. One of the biggest shifts for Chrisette was how she now understands her identity. For years, she tried to mold herself to fit into a world that demanded constant performance. She smiled in interviews when she felt empty inside. She sang love songs while feeling emotionally numb. She sat through chaotic meetings and loud rooms while her senses cried out for stillness. Looking back, she sees that much of this was masking a common coping strategy for autistic adults, especially women, who forced themselves to act normal just to avoid being rejected or judged. But masking takes a toll. Chrisette has spoken openly about the emotional and spiritual cost of living this way. A woman of strong faith, she spent years praying for peace and clarity. She used to ask God why she felt so different, why she never seemed to fit in. "Now I know I was not supposed to," she said tearfully during a live stream. "I was made to be exactly who I am." With this new understanding, she is beginning to rebuild her life, piece by piece. Chrisette is re-entering the music world, but this time, it is on her own terms. She is no longer chasing chart toppers or industry praise. Instead, she is writing songs that speak to her true experiences, songs about identity, healing, loneliness, and reclaiming her power as a Black autistic woman in a world that rarely makes space for either. And she is not stopping at music, she has become a voice for others too. Chrisette has started speaking publicly about autism and how often Black women are misdiagnosed, ignored, or dismissed by doctors and therapists. She is working with advocacy groups, hosting online conversations, and using her platform to teach and uplift. One of her biggest goals is to remove the shame around adult autism diagnoses and help people feel seen, especially women who have suffered silently for years. Forgiveness has also played a big part in her healing. Chrisette says she had to forgive not only the people who judged her, but also herself for not knowing, for blaming herself, and for staying silent. "I spent so long thinking I was broken," she said. "But I was never broken. I was just misunderstood." Her journey is still unfolding. But one thing is certain, Chrisette Michele is done hiding. She is done explaining. She is done apologizing. And now, for the first time, she is living as her true self. But one question still remains, what does all this mean for her future? Her fans want to know what is next for her music, her activism, and her legacy. Chrisette's story was never just about fame. From the moment she first stepped into the spotlight, her voice carried more than just melody, it carried truth, emotion, and now, something even greater, transformation. In 2025, that voice has evolved. It is no longer only about songs. It is about purpose. Chrisette sees her diagnosis not just as a personal discovery but as a mission, calling to change the way we understand autism, womanhood, and survival in the public eye. She is not just raising awareness. She is changing the conversation. Since sharing her diagnosis, Chrisette has become a powerful advocate. She is speaking out about how often Black women are left out of mental health conversations, how cultural stigma keeps people from getting help, and how autism when left undiagnosed can look like failure instead of what it really is, a difference the world failed to recognize. She is also teaming up with autism organizations to create tools and resources for Black girls and women, the group most often misdiagnosed and forgotten when it comes to autism care. Her goal is simple but powerful: to make sure others do not have to wait their whole lives to be understood. Chrisette is currently working on a memoir, where she will tell the full story from being a misunderstood child to a misunderstood artist, and finally, to becoming a woman who knows her worth, her emotions, and her mind. In many ways, this memoir is the album fans have waited for, not in melody, but in meaning, and yes, music is on the way too. She recently teased a new independent project hand this time. Every note will come straight from the heart. Chrisette Michele's next chapter has a name unmasked. That is the title of her upcoming music project, a powerful collection of songs born from her life after receiving her autism diagnosis. But this is not just another album. It is not about impressing record labels or chasing awards. This time, it is about truth, raw, honest, and deeply personal. Early reports say the lyrics are some of the most open she has ever written. They explore real-life struggles like masking, meltdowns, identity, isolation, grief, and personal growth. In a world that often celebrates the polished, the perfect, and the picture-ready, Chrisette is choosing something very different: honesty, and it is striking a chord. Thousands of fans, many who had once stepped away after the backlash from her Trump inauguration performance, are now returning. They are sending her love, sharing their own autism stories, and thanking her for helping them feel seen. Her courage is giving others the strength to speak up too. But this moment is about more than just one woman's story. Chrisette Michele's journey is showing us something deeper. It is about what happens when we finally understand who we really are. It is about what changes when the world stops ignoring those who have been misunderstood for far too long.